So I propose we get started. Thank you for joining the second episode of the Augmented Professional webinar. Now, for those of you who didn't read the fine print, this webinar is hosted by Raiana, but we do not talk about our products, our commercial features. This is really about, as the title suggests, the professional. So people who are jumping on the bandwagon of AI, like I think most of you in the call, and have nice experiences, interesting experiences to share about how they use AI in regulatory practice, how they drive it, how they innovate with it. So on the first episode a month ago, we had Dina Lakayan standing in for Dr. Yudan Lee at the time, presenting on how to introduce the AI tools in your regulatory practice. You know, how do you put them in your QMS? How do you validate the software? So that episode is available on our YouTube channel, as will this one be, by the way. But today we have Michael Konings. Michael is a Director of Regulatory Affairs at Philips Healthcare. Is that correct, Michael? Is that the correct phrase?
Yeah, it's Senior Director, but it's...
Senior Director. Oh, I apologize.
But don't worry.
Michael is a little bit older than I, so Senior Director.
Yes,
no, just kidding.
Yes.
That makes a difference. Senior Director at Philips Regulatory Affairs. And you have quite a large team, right, Michael, all across the globe even, managing the regulatory affairs for interventional X-ray devices. Large machines, class 2B under MDR, I guess, Michael?
R2B, yeah. Correctly,
so,
yes.
So those are not easy things, and Michael has a great team. But more than that, and more to the point of today's call, Michael has been a pioneer in using AI and deploying AI in his organization, and has experiences to share and views on, how do you shape a team, how do you give them the tools, and how do you move forward. So I would like to stop talking now myself and give the floor to Michael, and please share with us your insights, Michael.
Absolutely, and Martin, thank you very much for inviting me. So I'm looking forward for this to be an interactive session. We're with a small group, so that helps as well to get more interaction. Now, I will share my screen in a bit, and with that, I don't see you. So if Martin, if you see questions, please interrupt me. Then we will answer them on the spot. Especially a clarifying question, I think it's always very important. But indeed, today, and then I will share my screen. I want to talk a bit about modernizing regulatory affairs, practical tools to build an AI-ready team. And I will have that in two spots, two areas, but I will take you slowly through the slides. And it starts off because I believe that AI is you could even say it's a buzzword. A lot of people talk about AI. I believe that AI is super useful when you use it in the right way. I always believe that AI needs to be used in a problem-solving way, a strategical way, versus just wanting to use AI tools. And it also brings me to my first slide, first area. So what I brought today is 3 articles that currently describe some of that challenge where AI might be able to help. And to start off with that, we see that the regulatory landscape is continuously evolving. And we see it evolving significantly in the last couple of years. If you look here at the left bottom, we see the regulatory burden. It is an article from IQVI that they published on what the regulatory burden is and how they're growing. We see that around 120,000 global national authority medtech related documents, so let's say regulatory documentation, is being published. On average, 8,000 of these documents are added per year. 70% of those global requirements are no longer published in English, but in a native language. And 75% was increased in the last 5 years, which is a nice slogan always that I see is every 53 minutes, a new or changed national authority document relevant to medtech is published somewhere in the world. And of course, a lot of people can say that's a regulatory challenge because it's a regulatory document. But in this case, it's not only a regulatory challenge because these documents have impact on, of course, the regulatory team, the quality team, the clinical team, and with it also on the R&D organization, the marketing organization, and technically any function in an organization. And we see this back also when we look at the bottom right article. This is from Compliance and Risk, describing more the cost of that increase. So when you look currently at an average 510K, costs are about 31 million to clearance, from concept to clearance. For its 24 million is spent on FDA-related activities. If you move into a class 3, it's even more challenging. It's 75 million. So these numbers have been increasing significantly over the last, in this case, 11 years, around 64% increase. And if you look at Europe, everybody is aware, introduction of MDR and IVDR has increased up to tenfold of cost. That had to do with clinical evaluation reporting, with general cost of our notified body, and more new regulations coming into play. Now, if you remember that part, on the one hand, where cost is increasing, complexity is increasing, and then we also see here on the top, we see the regulatory know-how is challenged by more and more people. This article of Greenlight Guru highlights how knowledgeable do you personally feel in industry and regulatory compliance information, where we see individual contributors feeling 28% very knowledgeable on the changes of regulations, 44% of management and 56% of the senior executive. So we see an heavily increase by every minute of 53 minutes a new document. We see an increase in cost, and then also actually technically a decrease of comfortable on the new regulations. On the other hand, we see, and this is data from Global Regulatory Affairs Professional Workforce Report created together McKinsey, Robson, Ellamet, where we see there is not that many medical device experts out there. We actually see that majority is in North America and in Europe. And that's a declining workforce. A lot of people move to pharma and may not even start in a regulatory phase. Keeping these two in mind, on the one hand, an increase of regulations, more difficult to comprehend, and on the other hand, a declining workforce, it's a perfect storm to think of other solutions. And this is where I think strengthening the workforce through AI, augmented productivity, can really help. And of course, there are multiple ways on how we can solve such challenges. We can also choose as a company, which I see as well around us, that you no longer bring your products to the market. You choose specific regions that you will focus on and the rest not. But it's come quite with an ethical dilemma, because it means less patients will be treated. And in my conversations with peers, initially, especially outside of the regulatory and quality community, it was indicated, yeah, but that's far away from us. It's not impacting us. But we see with MDR, there are less products cleared for the European market. So it's not only somewhere maybe in a country far away, but actually in Europe, we also see this. I believe that there are other solutions to that one. And I think AI can really help in that way. And I see three pillars in this current AI area. I see strengthening the workforce through AI augmented productivity, navigating an evolving and fragmented regulatory landscape that tells much more about the AI Act, the new Chinese regulations, Korean regulation, new guidances and insights from the FDA. And then last but not least, the third pillar, redesigning future compliance roles in an AI augmented workforce. How do you create that regulatory expert of tomorrow? For today, I will only focus on the first and the last area. And with that, I will first start with strengthening the workforce through AI augmented productivity. And in my whole view for the upcoming years, I believe that there will be a human in the loop concept, where we have people that final validate documents, emails, assumptions, interpretations from AI, LLMs, agentic AI, AI agents, depending on what type of item you use. But there will always be that expert that needs to check what the outcome is. And again, if we start at the end, I always believe that it should come with a strategy. Now, in this picture, I still depict it very clearly as an AI strategy, but I believe over time, and if you really want to embed AI, AI should be part of your strategy and not a separate strategy next to your other strategy. If we then see on which developments do we have, I believe that at this point, or at least I chose 4 specific regions to talk about: regulatory intelligence, compliance alerts, documentation automation, and translation. And I want to walk through each of these items where I see the current trends, where we are, where we go to, and perhaps giving you some insights on where you want to use it as part of your teams, of your work, of your activities, of your strategy. If we with that start on regulatory intelligence. For now, and you see a cooperation with the compliance alerts, we see that documents are being monitored. Regulatory intelligence, what we currently still do very often is go to websites, have an email connection where you get introduced to new regulations, to new standards. Tools are already there, but they're very informative. They document something and you monitor that. It's an activity still at our people. And I believe over time, and we're already on that trajectory, but over time, they will actually predict impact of the new standards and regulations. The trend in 2026, I believe that AI that not only flags changes, but maps to products portfolio suggested remediation actions. By example, there will be perhaps a new NMPA regulation coming about from China that will tell you on an impact on the product in your portfolio. Let's say that X-ray system, if I look in my own field, or a software medical device, my experts no longer need to check the whole regulation, but there is an AI tool that indicates these are the key items that you need to think about when you're looking at your portfolio. I believe in 2026 that we will see some of that. And as Maarten already indicated, this is not sponsored by Raiana, but I will mention a number of those products in the presentation as well, where I feel that we see that you might want to look at. So in this case, I believe, especially in the regulatory intelligence, that a company like Rematics, Compliance and Risk can be products that can help you in AI-based standards analysis tools. But, and this is the only field that I really see this happening, I also see a lot of colleagues, companies invest here in their own LLMs to make sure that they create it in-house. And everything is there, of course, a choice. Again, it comes to that strategy. What do I do in-house? What do I do external? And here is one of the few examples that I actually see companies building it up as part of their core competences. And over time, again, if we go to the impact prediction, I believe that we will see next steps on when you are on this roadmap, this trajectory, that it will become more and more automated. Again, with that human in the loop, because that person needs to do the final check. The person also has the expertise, but I will come back on the human part, the skill level in the next part of the presentation. Now, if I look at compliance alerts, and like I said, it connects very well with the regulatory intelligence, because compliance alerts has a overlap on that one. I see that it goes from changing notifications to portfolio risk radar. So a little bit of a different angle in that way. It still talks about tools that can help you on being notified about compliance alerts, and that can be new regulations, maybe an authority have created new guidelines, country-specific rules, but also think of items like from the MOD database. Perhaps there is something has happened in the world with either a competitor or your own product that's highlighted in the MOD database. Now, currently, we see that that is then translated into an email and you have to read the email, which is quite still siloed approach. It's a manual interpretation. Yes, it is already much easier because you don't need to scroll through all the databases and the websites to get this information. It's already created in your mailbox. Second step, and that's the current trajectory 2025, 2026, because I see steps being made in here. We see how we move for more actual intelligence, where AI connects a regulatory change connected to product portfolio, standards, matrices, where you see that a standard is used on a roadmap where you will see connections, which product might be impacted. I can imagine that it will talk and search your submission history, which AIs did you get from, as an example, the FDA, talking about labeling updates that are connected to regulations or standards, post-market surveillance data being analyzed and already indicated. And around the end of the year, I hope, I perceive that there will be tools that can actually send you an information like, last night a change was introduced, and it will have effect on these 6 products in your portfolio for Europe and these 2 products in China. It's about a risk level medium, and we recommend the action to review Annex 2 of Section 4.3 and update the cybersecurity file. That will make our life much easier because we don't need to read the whole regulation, but you're already pinpointed into actual actions, traceable actions that implement compliance to the standard or regulation. Or insights about a MALT database that either your tool or a competitive tool has caused a trigger in the MALT database. And I believe that companies like Rematic and RIMS Integrations are ahead on this trajectory to implement that. If I then look at the next wave, and I hope to see that after 2026, early 2027, but it might even be out to 2030, I expect that it becomes much more strategical, and that would allow us within the quality, clinical, regulatory branches to more be a forward-looking functions, where these tools will, instead of reacting to published changes, AI will detect trends shift in authority languages. Think of drafts that are being created. Think of analysis of notified body deficiency letters, published 483s, where we see that the FDA is asking more questions about. Perhaps monitors on competitive label, on how they are being updated. Then moving away from the review from an email to getting clear insights on actionable items, but more on a preemptive, predictive compliance activities that again will launch our functions in the next area. Now, I don't have a lot of companies that are already in that field that are public about being in that field, but I foresee a number of companies moving into that field in the upcoming years. If I look at documentation automation, and I think that that's probably where most is used today, but not successful. So on the one hand, the documentation automation, I see the most publication on success, but equally as much publications on failure, where you put in a document and you expect the document comes out in the same level of intelligence that a regulatory, a quality, or a clinical expert has. Well, I don't think we're there yet. But I do see the IT areas, and then in that case, Maarten, I will have to point out your company. I think Raiana with ChatMDR is one of those companies together with Gen AI authorities, Viva AI, that are already working, making tools that come from a writing assistant to a structured submission engine, where it moves from free text generation to structured modular content reuse, auto-validated before submission, and built-in regulatory guardrails. I really believe that that's where we will see in the upcoming time, and it doesn't need to be 5 years, but in upcoming time, we see changes on. Similar changes I expect more from a literature and clinical evaluation automation perspective, where I see Distiller SR, Nested Knowledge, AI literature, and a number of consortiums-based automation platform moving from searching engines, or at least easy tools that help you screen a number of databases, towards extracting data, summarizing data, and creating traceable reports, all in an audit trail compliant way. And here again, I believe that if you compare those two from a technical file perspective or a clinical evaluation perspective, it allows us as experts to much more look at what is the outcome, what is the document that has been created, versus doing all these steps in all the details, making our work more fun, and also more harmonized throughout the business or even the overarching regulatory working space. And last but not least, I see translations. Translations was, in many cases, the first area where we saw AI popping up. Back 30 years ago, but currently as well, where AI translation is used in a multiple set of ways. And it can be really to make our life so much easier. Think of the example that we're all forced into using English. Now, especially for those people that do not have English as their first language, it might be much easier to work in Dutch, in German, in Hindi, any type of language, and your tool will translate it completely in a professional way into the English that the notified body might expect. Or when you go, as an example, to Mexico, it goes into a local language. I think there AI can be used, but also in translating of documents overall. By example, if you look at the examples around regulatory intelligence and compliance alerts, that your standard or regulation that is currently published, as shown on the second slide, for 75% in its native language, you instantly get that translated into a language that fits you best in the right way, because we often know how bad translation could be. But here, really vast amount of changes has happened that can make our life so much easier. These are the 4 pillars that I wanted to talk about where I see AI can be implemented at this stage. And again, as also the slide says, this is the basics. It's really about getting used to AI, getting comfortable with AI. But in parallel, again, it should hit your strategical wishes, your strategical needs, making sure that it helps you and your people to become more effective, have more fun in your work. If we then take the next step, imagine that we are 5 years further, perhaps 10 years further. How will AI then work with us? How are we ready as a team to work with AI? That part I would like to talk on the redesign future compliance roles in an AI augmented workforce. Because I think nobody wants to be the person here on the left side that feels left out, that feels without a job, feels being obsoleted by an AI tool. So we need to make sure that we and our people are ready for the future with AI. Because I believe at this point, AI is to stay, and better to embrace it, implement it, and learn from it at an early stage to be ready in the future. Now, this is, of course, my current view. Here you see, and I'll explain in more detail, a redesigned future regulatory roles meet our new team. And that team comes with new skills. And of course, a skill can be very easily already predicted. We need to prompt better. In the same way as in the 90s, you needed to work with Google in a different way than you need to do now. So also, as time passes, this team and its expertise will shift slowly as well. But let's start with the vision that I currently have for, let's say, the upcoming 5 years. And not all roles need to be in the specific functional area. But I will tell you a little bit on that more. If we start here on the left, the AI leader, I believe we need an AI leader, a strategist, and it not necessarily has to be within regulatory, clinical, or medical in that sense, but a person that leads the end-to-end AI transformation. That might be you that's here on the call, that defines a vision, guardrails, and operating model for AI-enabled work, let's say regulatory work, but it can also be R&D coding work. It can be clinical, it can be marketing. Again, AI tools can help us a lot. And depending on the size of your company, you might want to have one or more. This AI leader will manage partner relationships, oversee interacting with internal and external AI experts. Person will develop talent, deliver measurable gains in speed, quality, and consistency, without compromising, because that's always the key, safety, privacy, or integrity. Because in the end, we still make medical devices, and that treat patients or help treat the patient, make sure that we have the right clinical outcome. This person would own the AI portfolio, budget, and communication with executives. Then I see an AI operational lead. I chose that name, and we can have multiple names on such a role, but this would be a person that perhaps used to work in programming. I foresee that a lot of programming roles will be automated much faster than other regulatory, clinical, and legal roles. Because you need to have that human in the loop from a regulatory perspective, from a legal perspective, from an end accountability perspective. This AI operational lead will work closely together with the AI lead and the AI oversight specialist, strategist, and where applicable, the experts in the field. He or she will create, build, and run reliable, secure, compliant AI capabilities that power functions like ours, RA, QA, clinical, and really create the in-house tools that, in line with your strategy, are required. They might connect to the external world where applicable, other tools that are already working in AI, and build them, connect them together, and make sure that they stay working in a compliant manner. They will work very closely with the AI oversight specialist. This AI oversight specialist, I foresee, is a junior, perhaps media regulatory expert that works with the AI tools around the world. By an example, an AI tool world that's very specialized in US FDA regulation, Europe, and China, and make sure that what is inputted and as output generated is validated as part of that human in the loop perspective. This person will make sure that they will support the dossiers and authority interactions, because I do not believe, especially not in the short term, that any AI tool will interact with competent authorities, with notified bodies, with regulatory people on the other side of the call. It will be different when they have AI tool and AI tool talking with each other, then it would hit more that AI operational leads. But in the case of human interaction, human empathy, I expect that an AI oversight specialist will work with that. So this is more of a content expert in specific fields, specific regions, that works with AI to bring, with increased speed and quality, insights around regulatory requirements. Then I will jump the strategist, and I will go directly to the local country expert, because I do believe that there will be regions or countries where AI has not been implemented yet, where regulations are still in the current way of regulations. And over time, this might dissipate completely, but at this point, especially in the beginning, I believe that there will be people that will work directly with competent authorities, only work the current traditional way of working. And then when we have the AI oversight specialist, the local country expert, that will combine into that strategist, regulatory, quality management, clinical, medical office, that expert that merges the knowledge of the local country expert and the AI oversight expert in creating a strategy for a product and a portfolio from a product or a service, and able to orchestrate that within the company where it is expected to run an end-to-end regulatory strategy. Make sure that the different requirements of the countries, of the regions, are implemented in the best way, or at least the feedback is fed into the R&D process, marketing material, and so on, to make sure that it is a total solution and not a country optimized solution. Now, and with that, I will also move to the last part of this presentation, and I'm really looking forward to have interaction and discussion on this one. Where does it generally bring us? I believe, indicated also from those articles, as well as the decline of potential regulatory experts in the future, that it will be a bottleneck if you don't use AI. It will slower approvals, it will increase the cost for the manual labor, and technically the only way out will be reduced market access. if we start now or use AI, I believe with the use of AI in the right way, with a redesign of the roles, again, in the right way, fitting to your company, AI can be that enabler that increases speed, innovation, and enhances compliance. With that one, I also want to show you one more slide. And if you enjoyed this presentation, and later on we have that conversation, there will be another next week Friday session with Basil, Eric, Maarten as well, who's in the call, myself and Dina, talking to a broader audience, a longer time, talking about AI literacy for MedTech regulatory augmented intelligence. Really great that if you're interested, sign up and join us there as well. Now with that, I will stop talking and will be open for any type of question that the team would like to discuss.
Thank you, Michael. That was really insightful. That was really good. We have the opportunity to ask questions by microphone. We should have enabled the microphone feature so you can unmute yourself. Also, we have a question and answer section here in Teams. I will show you where. Oh, if I can type correctly. So you can post your questions where it now says here. And while you all think of your questions or unmute or type, I have actually a question myself, Michael. You mentioned something really interesting in the first half of your talk. You said that with the updates that you would get in your email, it wouldn't be just like, hey, new guidance published, but it would be an actionable thing. Okay, this is what has changed. And you said, and this is what has changed, and this is the impact on our products. And then you said, that's great, because then we don't have to read the entire documentation anymore.
Correct.
Now, I believe you. I drank the Kool-Aid. In fact, in a way, I'm brewing the Kool-Aid. But we also emphasize the importance of the human in the loop review. So how do you then see? How does the human enables him or herself to be in the loop without still having to read the whole thing from A to Z?
And very fair. And it's also about trust, of course. And this not, I would not say that this is, today you get an email about the standard and tomorrow you will trust the product completely to do its right way. So this talks a lot about being comfortable with the tool. But the tool and the manufacturers of the tool also make sure that it's validated in the right way. Very clear on what its capabilities are and not are. And with that, you will see that the more use of it becomes more comfortable, but that's also a pitfall because you don't want to blindly trust an activity. And over time, we will find also additional solutions on top of it. But the key for me is use this, and that's also why it's about the basics. Use this now on the areas that things can go wrong. Get more acquainted to it. And then together with your suppliers, also make sure that we make the product suitable and trustworthy, not only this release, but the upcoming releases as well. It's high level.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. I don't see other questions yet, so I'll keep going because I have so many questions. Oh wait, there is a question from Thomas.
Yes, thank you. So maybe I can make the icebreaker here.
Please do.
So, Michael, thank you for your lecture. That was very insightful. And I think this perspective on how AI can help in future regulatory submissions, even identification of new requirements is really an interesting perspective. So when I look to this more from the quality management side, immediately the question comes up, how can we as manufacturers, being under regulatory scrutiny, having to maintain certifications and so on, make sure that the outputs of all these AI systems are really trustful? And I would like to make the comparison to manufacturing processes like a sterilization, where we have an input and an output according to a certain specification. And then in between, there is a validation step. So I imagine, and Maarten, maybe this is also a question to you as let's say in Raiana, you will for sure have such questions. Should a company that starts deploying systematically an AI system for, let's say, establishing submission documents, should they validate such a system? How could that look like? And what happens with these very fast improvement cycles that we see in the AI systems? Yeah, so how can we translate requirements, like a simple validation requirements in ISO 13485, into a future setup of an extremely fast, I would dare to say, black box system from the user point of view?
And I think that's one of the key questions. So it's also great that you ask. Let me start with Martha, of course.
Sure. Go ahead, please.
And this is also one of the key areas where I chose to focus on these 4 areas that we just discussed, where it is not directly impacting the medical device from a direct perspective. There's always that human that will check the outcome. Now, how much checking will be there? There is this scale from 1 to 6, 1 to 7, fully automated. And there will be tools where you feel comfortable to automate more, to have it do more for you. But at the beginning, I expect, especially in that area 1, 2, where you will do a lot of oversight on that. We will learn more, also from a regulatory perspective, on what type of validation is required. Of course, we can use our current validation methods, but I agree, Thomas, it is quite a black box. And it's a black box that we don't always know exactly what comes out of it. And I also see that the regulators are struggling with that part, but also understand the power and the benefit of it. So this will be a working together to going more towards that direct implementation, that direct interaction, or even medical device itself, that for now is seen much more as a software medical device, Secret 304, with some add-on on top of it. So in that phase, I would always look in that way of thinking, the way of working. But again, I would be very conscious of where would you use and not use your AI enabled, but I would say automation as well. But where would you give out power to a tool, a part of software? Martha, you want to maybe add a little bit more from your perspective as well?
Yeah, thanks. I would. I think one of the points that you raised, Thomas, is that the output is non-deterministic, right? It's the black box, and not everything, and not every time the same answer comes out. I don't think it's the black box nature. I mean, Microsoft Excel is also a black box. I don't know what goes on inside Microsoft Excel, but I know that if I put a sum in there, some mathematics, the answer will be correct every time. I can validate that, and then with good statistical probability, I say, okay, I trust Excel to have it right all the time. Now, if you put something in Raiana or any other AI tool, Gen AI tool, then the answer might be functionally the same. Device classification, we started talking about it. It will come up with the same device class, but the wording it uses to get there and the order of things might be slightly different. So in our first episode of this webinar, so I recommend you view that one on YouTube. Dina Lakayan actually took this problem, and her point was that you should validate not so much the exact output. You should validate the functionality, just like with people. If you ask an employee you ask a question, you get an answer, and the second day they don't give the answer in the exact same words, you're not going to say you're fired. I mean, that's quite similar in a way. We're used to that. But to monitor it, and to your point about the fast cycles, this was a point that Dr. Yudan Lee made when she prepared for that webinar. She said, look, in their quality management system in her company, what they had done was they actually monitored the reviews. So the human in the loop reviews the output of AI. And then they monitored how many times the review led to an amendment. So something was changed by the human of the reviewer. They said they signed it off. And if they would see that go up, then they would say, oh, wait, the AI must be misaligned with our goals. If they saw it go down, they might say, oh, that's fantastic. But they could also say, maybe our people are getting a bit too casual about it. So then you can use those KPIs, really simple numbers, right? You can just run a query on your document control system. How many reviews have led to rework? That is, most systems can do something like that. And then you can monitor it continuously without having to every time a model updates, because to your implied point, that's every month or so, that you have to start a huge validation. That would actually add a lot of work because of AI in your organization. That's what you want to avoid.
So thank you very much, Martin and Michael. That's really good input. Maybe connected questions. Do you have already first insights you could share how authorities look to this in, let's say, derived from inspections or audits or other feedback you received?
So let me try to scope the question a little bit more on that one. So you have probably an idea in mind on the use case, Thomas. Am I right, or is I can guess, but
yeah, we can take as a use case one of the 4 examples that you had on your slide, like the documentation creation.
Yeah.
And the documentation becomes part of the quality management system then, and then it's, let's say, it can become subject to an audit, a certification audit, whatever, authority inspection, something like this. And then the point comes to how has this been generated, and the AI system is somehow becoming part of that audit or inspection.
Correct. No, absolutely. And I love that example because that makes it also a bit easier to talk about versus very high-level ideas. If I look at the documentation creation process, and if that is the technical file, the clinical evaluation report, or any type of document that is used as part of the final product to show that it is safe and effective. How I see this at this point, the notified bodies are also very curious on how they are going to see and look on this. Their first question will always be, at least in the near future, was this finally reviewed within the lines of the ISO 13845? Is there who is the author? And did the author really review the document end to end? Was there an independent person in line with the expectation of your quality management system? Because I think that's in the end still the only way to validate the output and to make sure that this is a document that you as a company want to bring out there. I think that's always still the idea around it. It should be compliant with your quality management system, and it should be to the quality level that you expect and want to put your signature on. Because still, it's your signature that you put on. If this is if let's say it's a 510K, and that 510K will say Michael, and I need to believe that it's sufficient quality that I want to put my name out on there. Now, sometimes you can also say, if you do it in a more traditional way, there might be sections of the document written by other people. In some cases, it will be by R&D, it might be by marketing, it might be a junior regulatory person. So what I would say, and it comes a bit also to shaping that team of the future, you need to understand what are the key aspects that you need to review to make sure that this document has non-bias, no false negatives, and so on in it. And you should be conscious about that. Does that mean that you need to write it out completely? I don't think so. The current quality management systems and expectation of the notified body or the regulators, to my knowledge, also don't indicate if it's a junior person that writes it, you need to review it like this. If it's an R&D person, you need to do it like that. No, they do expect that there's expertise in there. But in that, you need to be the smart way to make sure that, again, it comes in a bit to that first statement, to make sure that you put your name on it, to make sure that it's up to par, sufficient that you believe that you can put your name on it. I would not just write my name on it. I would review it again with with a lens of an AI, of a junior or an expert level, to make sure that a document is end-to-end safe. And in its current state, I would probably review still more part of the input, part of the output, perhaps specific section that I believe there's more risk in it, in such a way, again, that I can put my name on it. Does that help, Thomas? Or?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, thank you very much.
Happy to.
Maybe I can once again add one thing. Maybe while other people also think of their questions, if you have any, is that if I look in the Raiana user base, I cannot reveal names or companies, of course, but we do see email addresses with notified body domains in there. So these people are also at least sniffing the tools and see what they can do. Maybe they're using them for their own internal purposes. When I was in medical devices myself in my previous life, we got a review back that we were quite sure was at least aided by AI, because it was very detailed. It wasn't wrong, by the way. It was a good review, but it was like really thorough. Like, oh my gosh, they found everything today, which was a bit, but because that particular manufacturer at the time didn't have AI to answer the question, so they had quite a lot of homework. So I know that the regulators themselves are just like we are, also looking at what is possible. And using those tools, but I think in the end it is also legally, like Michael says, it's the natural person and the legal person, the legal entity, who is responsible for everything you put out there, whether you created it with a quill and as a monk copying a book, or by AI. That doesn't really matter. It's the end responsibility.
Correct.
Any other questions from the audience? We have close to 10 minutes remaining. If not, I have one more, Michael, for you. The second part of your presentation. Oh, Juha. Juha has a question.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Yes, we can.
Well, it's actually a very important question, that what tools are the notified bodies allowed to use? I don't think they can put together all my technical file documents and read them with AI. They should act as a human being, that they would read only one document at a time. The notified bodies should not be allowed to build my whole quality system in their AI. I don't know the answer, but I think it's unfair if they can run my whole documentation to an AI and make some reviews. My own opinion, just.
Yeah, then it becomes a little bit of a philosophic conversation, which I like as well, but I'm not sure we're able to answer all. Because of course, I cannot speak for a notified body or for a competent authority, but to my knowledge, at this point, there is nothing that prohibits a notified body to do it fully automatic. Now, that comes more than to the question, am I aware of any notified body that does it fully automatic? The answer, I think, is no at this point. Might there be in the future something like that? Yeah, on the other hand, why not? I think that again, then it becomes more a philosophical conversation, but I can imagine that there will be areas, at least, that can be fully automated, checked, and that can be AI, but any type of automation can be used to check at least specific parts of the technical file. By an example, think of the 60601. 60601 is quite clear in its boundaries, so it does not require a lot of real interpretation, and I can check a document from an NRTL perspective, or from an FDA or a competent authority regulator perspective. Is it within the boundaries? And is the answer in the boundaries? Then it's a pass. I recognize, Juha, that it becomes more challenging when it becomes on real interpretation. But again, it comes to my knowledge, there is no restriction currently available that it has to be a human person. But I might be right there, so I want to really make sure that I'm thinking this and not per se knowing this. But to my knowledge, there is no restriction on doing it all in a thing of AI, because our regulations are not written in that way.
No, and I once actually asked this question to AI to see, because it knows all the regulations, right? So it was easy to find. And Michael is right. There is no line in the regulation yet. I mean, the MDR is from 2017. I don't think it was an issue back then. I don't think it's been in the updated proposal either, that there is anything anywhere where it says a notified body may only employ humans. I think it's the same thing as for the manufacturer. And in the end, they sign off, they sign their name, and that they take responsibility in that respect. There is one thing that a friendly auditor told me. He said, look, a surveillance audit is sampling, right? We come 3 days to your site. We don't have time to lift every rock and look under it, what is there. So the next year we come, we might find something else. And then you cannot say, well, but you said it was fine last year. No, we didn't look at it last year. And his view on using AI was you can increase the sample, not sort of sample rate or sample density a lot with AI, which for a notified body might be really good news, and for a manufacturer, not so good news. At the same time, a manufacturer could use similar tooling to maybe before submission, find some of the pitfalls and say, okay, this is where our weak points are. We submit it now, but in the meantime, let's already start working on these things, because then we know they might come back.
I think that also connects to a portion of the second question of Thomas. I think there's where you really can use AI for, maybe not for per se for the final product, but to understand and scoop out where your challenges towards compliance are and how hard are they, by making within a company check all your documents that might be even in some cases 20, 30 years old, but to pop up that very quickly and not put a team of 100 people to check all documentation, but make an AI that allows you, and again, that has very limited impact, but it has great value for a business to understand where your weak spots are. And by that, creating mitigation plans, perhaps CAPAs, depending on the severity of the outcome.
Yeah, and you referred to coding, Michael. I often use it as the canary in the coal mine, where things happen first, just because of the nature of the technology. During this webinar, where Michael was talking and I was listening, I got pop-up messages that one of the Raiana coding agents building one of the future features is going and has been going for 5 hours to build this addition to Raiana Enterprise. Spoiler alert, it's the SharePoint connector for those of you who are waiting for that one. So that is being built, and that is an agent that is continuously working and going in the background. And my vision, by the way, this is not available now, so don't ask me to sell it to you yet, but is that if you have such a gap in your file, you found it, maybe you can put a team of regulatory AIs on it and plug the gap, right? Depending on what it is. If it's new test evidence, you might have to actually do testing, but you could maybe, if it's a documentation update, maybe just like with coding, the AIs can actually plug that gap for you, and the human can review what has been done at the end after 5 hours or whatever. All right, we have time for one more question, and I will not try to ask my question because I don't think I'm going to get it across. That's fine. Anyone? Maybe I will try to ask my question.
Okay. I would just give a short answer.
Yeah, please give a short answer, because we want to stop on time and give people their evening back, or wherever it is in the world for you. Michael, in your second part of your presentation, you talked about the professionals, right? And you also highlighted the fact that AI moves, or this was something that Thomas said, AI moves super quickly. So how do you equip your organization to keep in touch with those developments without having to go through a long selection process with a big meeting of a lot of people? Which of the roles that you describe kind of keeps an eye on the state of the technology and say, hey, we need to put someone on this for a week?
Yeah, so in that case, I think it starts with that AI leader. And sometimes I call him the AI director, but the person, the orchestrator of the AI in the company. Because, and again, it depends a little bit on the size of the company. It can be one person that looks at all tools, on all the aspects from a strategical point where you can use AI. And most likely, especially in the booming environment of AI, you want to focus on key areas and not try to meet all the companies that make AI tool. Set up guardrails, look at the budget, and connect with those third-party providers. And then an AI operation lead, operation person, would work together with those companies to implement it in your company. Again, on those points that you feel strategically needed, that person would also most likely know the connection points, the interfaces with the other products that are required to work together. Very short answer, but as intentionally due to time.
Well within time. Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you all for joining and for your good questions and interaction. This episode will also go to YouTube, so keep an eye on well, either the YouTube channel if you're subscribing, or to LinkedIn if you want to listen to it again or share it with your friends and colleagues. The Augmented Professional will be back next month. We try to do one a month, so also keep an eye out for that next announcement. And then, as Michael said, next week, on Friday the 13th, late in the evening, because it's California time, we'll have with RAPS South California, we have another webinar on regulatory augmented intelligence in practice. So thank you very much, and hope to see you soon, and goodbye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.